What's up everybody? Welcome back to another Rotary Miata video. Today we are working on differential stuff. So we're taking the RX-7 diff and putting it in the Miata. There's a couple different ways if you are rotary swapping your Miata that you can do your drivetrain. I know a lot of people want to have a completely factory Miata rear end, so Miata diff, Miata drive shaft, and then the RX-7 and Miata transmissions are both modular, so they come apart at 3 different sections, and so there's no chopping or anything like that. You just take the tail shaft off of the transmission and put the Miata one on. That way you can use a Miata drive shaft, Miata diff, and Miata axles. But for me, I want to run a little bit more power than the Miata differential is capable. Normally you can run 200, maybe 250 horsepower into a Miata diff. And I want to make about those numbers. I don't want to go crazy, like maybe I'll go to 350 eventually. But for now, I'm going to aim for 250 and I just want it to be strong. So even if I swapped RX-7 internals into a Miata diff, the Miata differential has a little breaking point which it can snap at, and a lot of people have these problems and end up using RX-7 housing anyway, since it is pretty much a direct bolt-in. The only problem for me is I will not be using a PPF. For those of you who don't know what a PPF is, it's a frame that runs along the Miata's chassis, and the transmission and the differential both mount up to it. So I won't be using those. I'm going to have to make custom diff mounts and transmission mounts. And I was making engine mounts anyway, so I thought I might as well make this thing a little beefy so I don't have to worry about it in the future. So that's what we're doing today. I'm pretty excited. Let's get to work. The first step is to take out the old bushings out of the diff because the Miata bolt size is slightly different than the RX-7. So we gotta slap out the bushings, and that is why I have this big ass hammer. So let's hit some shit.
Start it up.
When in doubt, WD-40. So I got these polyurethane Miata bushings. I think I opted for the cheap, like no name brand, Mazda Miata 90 to 97. If you want to go with Moss Miata, I know those are really good. Honestly, most like aftermarket Miata sites are going to have decent ones. If I can open this, just open this side. I think these were straight off of Amazon, so we'll see how they do. If I can open this. Alright, so I'm going to see how easily these actually just, if they'll just slide in here or not. I would be surprised if they do. It's not bad. And then these just go into here. Might need the hammer for this. So in order for the cross member washer to properly sit in the bushing that came with it, we're going to have to remove all this rubber piecing around it, and the instructions for these bushings say to heat up this metal section and just scrape out all this rubber, so that's what we're going to do for both of these. Well, it's pretty hard with a heat gun to, slice all this off. Maybe with a blowtorch and heating up this metal part, this would all just fall off. But I don't have a blowtorch, so we're just gonna hit it with an angle grinder and just chop it all off. Well, it should definitely be nice and hot now, since all that friction, so I'm going to grab a little chisel, see if we can just order to get the diff in, I need to take out my half shafts because these are from a 1.6 and I need 1.8 Miata half shafts. These are a little bit too long and I wasn't able to get this nut out of the hub, so I just took out the whole upright for right now, and I'll get those off later. And now we're going to start getting the diff and throwing it in without this half shaft being in the way. So we're going to start getting the diff in here, lift it up, and see if we can mount it up. So the diff is mostly in at this point. As you can see, the little bolt is sticking out of the bushing. But we ran into a slight problem. This bushing in the front is hitting this little protective panel, so it looks like I'm gonna have to drop it back down, smack this with a hammer to clearance it a little bit. I think this is just a cover for the fuel tank, so even if I smack it in a little bit right here for some clearancing, shouldn't be a problem. So I'm just gonna drop the diff back down, hit this a little bit so we can make some clearance, because this is pretty close, but it's still like kind of tilted off a little bit, so it's not sitting completely flush, but it is almost there. I think this is the only part that is in the way, and once we hit that, throw it back up and hopefully it should sit flat.
This is lit.
Well, hopefully that was enough hitting, and I'm going to throw the diff back in, and I'll update you when it's back in. Hopefully it's enough clearance that it fits, because dropping that diff and putting it back in by myself is kind of a pain. So yeah, I'll be back in a second. So the diff is in by the two main mounts, this one here and the one on the other side. But now I have to make a third mount for this right here. And so what I'm thinking is, oh my god, this is really hard to see. Let's see if I can do this. So what I'm thinking is running a little metal bracket that starts from these two and runs straight backwards up here and mounts to this sidewall here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's kind of tough to get the camera angle in here. Let me see if I can do this. So I'm gonna mount, like a strip of metal right here, have it plated on the other side in the car. I think this is about where the back of the seat is, and then I'm gonna run it here to the diff. At least that's my plan at the moment. So I'm gonna get a metal piece and see if it'll actually kind of fit, and I might have to clearance this a little bit more, probably with an angle grinder this time. So we'll see what happens in a minute. Well, it's been about a week since I have last, made a clip of this video, and the reason for that is because I got the diff in and I made the bracket, which I will show you in a second. But for the most part, I was unable to get the axle out of the old upright assembly. So I had to go pick up new uprights, and I was able to go grab the shorter 1.8 axles, which hopefully will fit perfectly in here, but we'll find out in a second. So the first thing we're going to do is grab these knuckles and throw them in and make sure the axles fit and everything's good. And then I'm going to finish putting in the bracket that I made for the front diff mount. So we're going to get started on throwing the knuckles in and move from there. So the first test is to see if this will actually mate up with the RX-7 diff, which I'm still not 100% certain it will. And it doesn't. Well, god damn it. Really? Are you serious? No. Why? The forums lied. So as you can see right there, NA RX-7 diff may mount perfectly in, but it looks like RX-7 stub shafts do not fit into 1.8 Miata axles. Which means I need to get 1.8 Miata stub shafts and put them into the RX-7 diff. Hopefully they're splined the same, so they'll just slip in, and if not, I'm totally screwed. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do. Custom axles, that would suck. Or 1.8 Miata differential internals in the RX-7 diff casing, but then I might as well just have a Miata diff, and yeah, so this is a problem. That is quite unfortunate. I'm going to have to do some research on if RX-7 is the same spline as Miata for stub shafts, because if it is, then it's an easy swap. And if it's not, then we're gonna have to totally redo everything, because I won't be able to use this diff. I'm gonna have to use a 1.8 Miata diff. I'm gonna have to not chop, but since the transmission is modular, take off the tail section of the RX-7 transmission and put the Miata transmission tail shaft on, so I can run a Miata drive shaft, Miata diff. It'll probably bolt straight up to the PPF, which actually might be kind of nice. But I don't have a PPF, so I'd have to get one of those too, and I'd have to buy a Miata transmission. So I don't want to do that. I'd rather just fit all the RX-7 parts on here properly. Yeah, I'll be back. Alright, so I did some digging around on the internet, and apparently these, I popped these out just to measure them, but apparently, oh my god, I can't do this. So apparently on RX-7 diffs, this pattern is about, I don't remember what it was, maybe 4.5 inches? Yeah, 4.5. And the size on the Miata axles was about 4.25. But I found out that the spline that goes into the diff is 26 like little splines by 27 millimeters. So that is all good, and I pulled both of them out because some RX-7 diffs have unequal length shafts, and these are about the same. Well, they're the same. So we should be good to get Miata half shafts, Miata stub shafts, throw them in there, Miata axles, Miata upright. And it should all fit, in theory. So we're good to go. I just have to go pick up a new pair of these. So, in the meantime, actually, I'm not going to do that in this video, but I'm going to do some other work while I wait to go get new stub shafts, and then we can fit the whole axles in. And if you're wondering how to pop these out, basically what I did is when it was in the diff, I got a screwdriver and just pried it, and it popped out. Luckily mine were pretty greased up, and they came right out pretty easily. So hot tip, if you're taking these out, pry bar. So I was kind of freaking out yesterday because those axles were kind of scaring me, but I figured out what the problem was. Turns out the forums did not lie. Always believe what you read on the internet, because the guy who I bought the axles from accidentally gave me 1.6 axles and not 1.8. So I went back and got another pair, and we're going to throw those on right now. So let me go grab them from the trunk of my car and we'll slap them in. So unfortunately, they're not in amazing condition. As you can see, both the boots are torn. So we're either going to have to do a boot replacement or a full axle rebuild. I mean, honestly, they feel pretty decent. I don't think they need a full rebuild, just new boots. But for now, we're just going to slap these in just to check fitment. So let's get started. So I made this diff bracket just to hold the front of the diff. There are two mounting points in the front on bushings, and I just made this L bracket, and now I have to drill 2 holes in the chassis just to keep this in properly, and then we'll have the diff fully sorted out. That'll be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys like what the build is going and want to support me, you can go to finiteco.net and buy some merch, some shirts or hats, whatever you want. It really supports me. I greatly appreciate it. Next step is to get the engine in the car and mock it up for placement, start doing transmission mounts, start doing engine mounts, and then, pull it all back out to rebuild the engine and get the engine bay painted and finish up the chassis before we put the engine in for the last time. So, next up, engine. Very exciting. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.